Welcome back, friends. Today we're going to talk about Airtable. I use this tool to make lists, and this makes me happy. Whenever I can get data that I can sort by different criteria and take out of my head and put it somewhere safe, that I don't need to think about it until the time comes, um, I get this urge to try it out and see how it can improve my life. I can explain Airtable in 3 levels, and today we're going to cover level 1, which is the basic level, how you can start some bases like sheets in Excel and work from that place on, just to input your data and have it visualized in an easy way. Levels 2 and 3 we're going to cover at a later date, and they involve complex functions between sheets and between bases. And level 3 involves using the advanced features of Airtable, which is API driven or integrated inside with a lot of other apps that Airtable uses. So, without further ado, because no one has time for 3 hour long tutorials, I'm going to try to keep this one short, probably half an hour, and it's going to be split between the most basic part where we discuss about the interface and how I use it in its most basic form. So, first things first, when you're gonna create an account, you will be met with this interface. On the left hand side, you will have workspaces, and you can create more workspaces because you can uh, divide your time and your energy into whichever businesses you're running. Maybe you're collaborating with different people for on different sides of the business. Maybe you're managing your business and you have other people. At some point you will have other people managing some of these tables. Right now I have only one personal workspace on this account. This is a teaching account, and I have a Airtable tutorial base that I want to show to you, shared with a different account, with my main account. So right now we're gonna do this base. If you want to build a new base, you just press here from scratch, or you can upload an Excel file or a Google Sheets file, or you can start with a template. I always advise people to check out the templates because it gives you a rough information of how other people are using the app. And you can deconstruct it and use bits and pieces in your own things. So right now we're gonna start with the Airtable. So you can build a new one, but you can also start with a basic one. Whenever you're opening a new base, you will be met with columns and rows just like Excel. But don't imagine the fact that you can immediately do functions with it just like you would normally do in Excel, because this is a database. So most of it is based on information that you can then filter somehow. So for example, if I'm talking about the interface, right here there will be some tabs, and the next levels will be automations and interfaces. These two are for level 2 and 3. Here you will have different types of views which are predefined filters, you will see in a second. And then for levels 2 and 3 you can have extensions on the right hand side upper right left corner. On the left hand side left corner, you have different types of views for your information. So once you populate your base with a lot of info, you can filter it and you can show it in a particular way. So for example, a grid layout, like you see right here, it's going to be whatever you're seeing right now. A calendar layout, if you have enough information that has a date set to it, like a starting date and an end date, will be able to show information in a calendar form. The gallery is, for example, you have a collection of pictures and you want to show them in a gallery format. The Kanban is a Trello style to-do list, for example. So you can have multiple columns um, with information, and each column can be to do, I'm doing this, and done. Of course, you can have several other types of filtering criteria. That's your thing. Timeline is dependent on the information you are storing next to each um, data point. List, it's the same thing, and Gantt works like a flow chart. So for example, you can have multiple projects at the same time, but you can't work on some of them because you haven't finished your work on some previous projects. They are dependent, and you can set these codependencies. If you don't know what the Gantt chart is, you can check out the internet and see how that works. But for the purposes of this specific video, we're gonna skip timeline and list and Gantt because they are advanced and they also cost money. So for example, whatever I'm telling you in this level 1 tutorial, it's going to be totally free. You can start an account, start populating with information. I've been using a free account for 7 years. Every year I'm thinking about upgrading, and I managed not to do that for the past 3. Like seriously, I've dodged kind of a bullet because you pay for every seat, and right now I find it cheap because it used to be more expensive. Now it's around $20 per month per seat. So for example, if you have 4 people working on the same base, um, each of you will pay $20 per month. So this column will never move. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. This column will never move, and it can be a text column or it can be any other data form from this list. It can be a long text with a rich format. It can be a date, a phone number, an email, you name it. Usually I keep this one as a short name or a short single line text, and then I play with the other ones. Airtable suggests a notes, an assignee, and the status. So for example, if you have task number 1 and you have a note that says we need apples, you have an assignee, you can assign someone to this. You can assign Vlad, for example, and the status is in progress. And imagine now you have all this information populated with 20 tasks between 10 people, or imagine you're in a household and each member has some specific tasks that they need to do. But let's just say we don't need the notes, we don't need the assignees, we don't need the status right now. We're trying to build a database that covers yearly charges or income and expenses and things like that. And if I do that, if I want that, I will delete all these and start from scratch. So for example, now, because it's not the first column, I have I have several other possibilities. Single line of text is self-explanatory. Long text can let you populate with a either longer paragraph or rich text format, which can allow you to make lists inside a list. So for example, you can have a shopping list, and inside that you can have several items, and you don't need to use several rows for those items. You can have one row that says Monday's shopping. Long text, I talked about attachment. You can add invoices, pictures, short movies, sounds. It doesn't matter. It's an attachment. I usually use it for invoices or images. The checkbox is either on or off, but it gives you the possibility to filter at some point in your Airtable journey by if it's checked or not. So for example, you can have a to-do list or you can have a shopping list and you can filter, just show me the things that I haven't bought yet. Multiple select, it gives you the possibility to include some data points in multiple categories. So for example, if I'm paying rent, I can put the rent inside January, February, March, April, May, so on and so forth. And at some point in time, if I want to filter for all the expenses in January, it will still be included because it responds to the question, is this in a January category? Single select is kind of self-explanatory. After I've explained the multiple select, you can have only one of those. So for example, if my expenses are for home or office, or maybe I want to track my kids' expense, not his expenses per se, but costs, I can have it to single select. With the user field, I can assign things to specific users and they will get a notification. With the date, I can assign a start, any type of date, but I use it in two different columns. For example, I can create this one and I'll teach you a tip. I can right click and duplicate the field. And now I have start, I can edit this and say start date. And then the next one can be end date. So for example, if I'm using February 7th and March 9th, so this task will take around a month. If I want to add a phone number, for example, I have a list of clients that I need to save information for. The name will be the name, the name column will be the client's name, and then I can add data such as phone number, email, URL for his website, and an attachment, for example, the invoices I've sent him. The next thing I want to talk about is the number. This is going to be the most used type of field because you can have numbers associated with this task, for example, or this data point. It doesn't need to say number. It can be revenue or earnings or whatever. It doesn't matter. And you put here 2000. It can be dollars, euros, doesn't matter the currency. You can have it in a currency form. If you select the next one after number is going to be currency, and it just adds the symbol. It's the same as a number, but it adds the currency symbol in front of it to make it easier to identify. So for example, I can have a different type of value here. So you can have 3 payments from this client, number 1, between these dates. He paid you 3 times an amount of $3,000 each time, and the next column is going to be a formula. So for the formula, I will have earnings multiplied by value, because the name is value. He will remember this and he will calculate. If I change the value here in terms of contract or contract value, it doesn't change the formula. He knows to replace whatever information you had in the past with the new one. So this is good. You can also add for the formula, you can format it as a as a currency if you really want to. So the next one that I want to talk about is percent is self-explanatory. You can have different percentage for different VAT values. For example, 5% for food, 9% for non-alcoholic drinks, and 19% for everything else. So if you're running a restaurant, you can have different items cost or price multiplied by the VAT, and you will get the actual value. Um, the duration, it's going to tell you how long something took. So for example, this task may be used 3 hours and 30 minutes, and task client number 2, you had 2 earnings or one, it was $5,000, and the duration was 1 hour. You will always have automatic calculations done at the base of Airtable for that specific column. So for example, these are sums, but I can change them to give me average, median, min, max. It depends on whatever I'm tracking. But at some point in time, you will be able to calculate the whole revenue from that specific client and divide it by the hours that you worked for that project and see your efficiency. For example, you can also use, instead of duration, you can always use a number. So for example, if you don't need the minutes or seconds, you can go in a broader sense to use integers or integers. Um, just like I did with earnings, I can duplicate this field, duplicate the cells. I can move this one over, and I can say this one took 3 hours and this one took 1 hour. And I can go here and say, I don't want decimals and I don't need them. So now I have integers. Okay, if I'm pronouncing this wrongly, I'm sorry. And I'm scooting everything over because I need the room, the space. Rollups and count and lookups are advanced features that you can use in between these sheets. So for example, I can have all my earnings in one sheet and all my expenses in a different sheet, and I can track the profits and losses in a third sheet of, I think they are calling these tables, but whatever, sheet table, doesn't matter. Created time and last modified time, these are things that you want to have active. Maybe you want to have active if you have more people working on the same giant document in which you have tasks and projects and project management related things, because you can always track whenever some data points have been modified. And at a later date in levels 2 and 3, we can go in depth and create notifications for whenever stuff has been modified. And also we can track how long has passed since the last modification and things like that. Created by and last modified by, these are important again if you're working with a lot of people in one document. Auto number is just that. It will number all the fields from a specific point on. Barcode is for products, and button is an advanced kind of field. You can attach a button to any type of row and the button will do an automation. You can set the button to do all sorts of macros, which is a succession of actions to get a specific result. So these are all the field types that you can have in Airtable. How you use them is up to you. Everyone's different. But I want to show you, because I don't want this tutorial to be like 300 hours long. This is the most basic explanation how the table works. But the best thing I can do to show you how these fields here, like the hide fields and filter and groups and sort and color and things like that work is, and this is to bring you to different types of case studies that I've prepared for this presentation. So for example, you might want to track your net worth at some point. If you haven't done this already, do it with this tutorial. So in tracking your net worth, you will need a few things. So for example, right now this grid view has two hidden fields and it's grouped by two fields. So let's see how it's grouped. It's grouped by assets and liabilities and it's grouped by a subclass. If I remove these, it will be a basic spreadsheet. But what you don't see is these data points have a single select attached to them. So this is a single select that is called assets and liabilities because this is what I wanted. I created a single select type of field and I've put in some data points. So for example, assets and liabilities right now, they're split into liquid assets, investment assets, personal assets, short-term liabilities, and long-term liabilities. When you're doing a net worth kind of thing or study, this is your most basic list. It's like categories. And I've attached a subclass because I want to group things by how much my car costs me, what I need to sell because I don't need anymore, bank accounts, how much I have in my bank accounts, how much can I get back from life insurance or my retirement fund, the stocks, the house, and these with red are debt, housing costs, office taxes, and income taxes. Most of the people might have a mortgage on their house because they borrowed money from the bank. You would put it in the debt slash borrowed category. Some people borrow from other people. It doesn't matter. As long as you have a debt, you have a liability. So now let's filter back to get the view that we started with. I group them by assets and liabilities, and then I want to group them by subclass. Okay, so once I've put here USD and euros. My investment portfolio is in dollars. My assets are valued in euros because it's easier. But the sum on the right hand side is 1 plus 1. I know the dollar and euro have a different parity right now, but for the sake of this exercise and the simplicity of this document, I won't go into complex formulas. But I can always go into the sum in euro, and instead of having just USD plus euros, I can have USD multiplied by the coefficient of the parity, and then plus euros, like, yeah, multiplied by, divided by. Doesn't matter. And you would take a list like this and start to populate it with information. So for example, his main bank account, maybe it has $5,000 and doesn't have any euros, but her bank account might have 4,000 euros. His company's bank account, when I say company, maybe he is maybe he's the CEO of a company, or maybe he has a company and it's his and he's the only employee. It doesn't matter. You can have you can take into consideration the money of in that account. So maybe they have 40,000 in that bank account. Maybe she's the boss of a different company and she can freely take 60,000 euros from that account. Maybe he has a Revolut account, and in that specific case he has $3,000, and maybe her Revolut account has around $7,000, $799, $7,000, and his life insurance policy maybe covers, I don't know, 300,000, and her life insurance costs 300, 400,000. Maybe you don't have these types of life insurances and you would put 0. Doesn't matter. But maybe you have a retirement fund, and maybe it's one that you've had jointly for probably 20 years, and it has 450,000 inside. Everything is calculated on the right hand side. It gives you a sum for this subclass. It gives you a sum for this specific subclass, and you would go down this rabbit hole and fill out all the information. Okay, I can show you this. These are things that I can sell in a heartbeat for a loss, but I can always put put a value here. And then you would go to short-term liabilities, fill this out, and you will see at the end of this road your net worth. And what did I do to get to this point? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows with specific information that I can filter by. So now I have created here, I just plus here a grid, and I create a new grid, and it doesn't duplicate the information. It just lets me see it in a different way, because right now, if I go to assets, all I have differently is I'm filtering the information that I have in my document by where assets and liabilities is any of liquid assets, investments, and personal assets. Because what I'm interested in, okay, I want to see how much liquidity can I obtain on a short notice. And then I have a separate a separate view for my liabilities. So for example, I know at any given point what's my cost of doing business or cost of operating. So this was a simple one. When you know your net worth, then you can calculate how much should I spend on a car, how much should I spend on an apartment, how much should I spend on holidays and things like that. But maybe you want to go in depth from this point. Then you would have a cash flow type of document. What is this mumbo jumbo that I'm doing here? It's the same thing. Rows, these are numbered rows for every month, because right now this document tracks income and expenses, and 4 numbers important to track in the same document. So I've started with the basics, I've built it up, and maybe the information I'm tracking is not necessarily useful to you. Maybe it's too little. Maybe you have some other things that you want to track. But right now, if we take into consideration whatever we're doing, we're having incomes from rent, and then there's always something to sell throughout the year. We're making money with web design, with branding and photography and online communities and social media management and courses. And I can say, okay, I have stuff to sell on eBay. And then if I go to January, I sold stuff for 300 euros in January, 120 euros, 100, sold nothing in April, nothing in May, 50 euros, 200, 100, 5,000. In September, maybe I sold something that I didn't use anymore. Maybe I sold some camera gear. And then 0 in October, 0 in November, and in December, maybe I sold something for 400 euros. So now I get back almost $6,000 euros, sorry, from whatever I sold throughout the year. And then I can have info about it. I have a short information about it. Maybe it's a recurring theme. This is where it goes. This is a income field. I can have it be an expense or savings, and then I can filter it out. Source destination is who gets the money. In this case, it's nothing here because I get the money, but you will see here in expenses that some other people get the money. For example, we're paying for our website and Squarespace and all that jazz. It adds up. The category is where does this expense or income goes to or comes from. They're all in one place because I can filter by groups. It doesn't matter. And in terms of the income, how many hours I've spent on selling stuff. Maybe taking pictures of the items that I sold took me like 10 minutes, and then prepping the ad maybe took me 10 minutes, things like that. So for every month, I would use 1 hour, then it's 12 hours of my life spent on selling stuff that I don't need anymore. So basically, the hourly efficiency right now is a number, but I can change it to a formula. And the formula is, um, let's see if I remember, I can save this, cancel. The formula is going to be P&L. So right now the sum is under P&L 2024. I can go here, hourly rate, change it to a formula and say P and L. I can just select it from here. Divided by hours. It helps if you spell it right. And then I know for my time for each hour, I got 523 euros in this specific case. The renew date and four numbers to track are things that they don't need necessarily to be in the income category. I can just right click and hide and right click and hide because renew date it's something that I use for subscription services and whatever I'm paying throughout the year, recurrent payments, I would say, and it helps. And now you see a NaN here. It's because we don't have information. If you have 0, that's information. If you have nothing, that's no information. So he doesn't know how to calculate everything else, but he does know how to calculate for whatever I sold. So for example, from photography, I would take photo shoots and do the same thing. Let's say every month we do 3,000 euros from photo shoots, and then I would drag this out until, okay, stop, yeah, December. And he will populate the list. And now I know I make 36,000 euros from photography throughout the year. This does not take into consideration taxes and everything else because the taxes are expenses. I put them in expenses. I don't have like a separate third category that's taxes. It's just money going away from my bank account, so it's an expense. But for every for the photography for photo shoots, let's just say we've made 3,000 euros per month, and we've spent 10 hours of shooting time and 10 hours of photography retouching. So we have 20 hours. If we put 20 hours here, we'll see that we get 1,800 euros per hour. This is not the case. This is fiction. This will never be this. Probably throughout the 12, no, because I forgot to multiply that by 12 months. So now I have 240 hours. Okay, he's calculating. Now it's 150 per hour, which is good, but not great. And you can go and populate everything with information. If I want to see how this looks without any of the filters or any of the groupings, I can just create another grid for you. And this is test. I'll say naked. I don't know. Create new design. And this is how it looks unpopulated. You will have some information here. These are empty. Probably I forgot to delete them at some point, but you can just select them, right click, delete, delete. I can do the same here. And now it looks scary, but when you start to put information, when you start putting information into these fields, you will see that you can then filter them and whatever you want with information later. I said income, you saw the income. Right now we have, oh, maybe I was not supposed to delete those. I'll do this again. Yeah. I think there's something behind it that maybe I shouldn't delete. Now you can see the expenses. So for example, I can minimize all these. And you have home, office, kids, transportation, entertainment, employees collabs, taxes and insurance, recurring services, amortization, and investments. You might have more categories. You might have fewer categories. It's your thing. You might have more, like, fewer items in your home. These are things that cost me money, expenses. I will write them down with a negative inside. It's like negative in front. Negative gas heating, maybe it costs me in January 100 euros. And in February, maybe it costs me 75. It doesn't come default, the negative aspect of, you right click on it, edit field, and then allow negative numbers. You need to check this, otherwise it doesn't work. Because negative numbers allows me to track in one single grid view the income and expenses for every month. And what I like to see is a positive number at the bottom. And that means I made more money that month than I spent with everything that costs. Home, office, they are fixed costs and variable costs. So for example, rent is a fixed cost until the landlord decides to raise the price. The electricity is a variable cost because we're using more electricity in the summer to cool down the place. But we're using more gas to heat up the place in the winter. You get the drift. For example, transportation, we have an older car. We need to do a verification every year. We're paying for actual fuel and consumables. If you want to go in depth with the entertainment, I left only family trips and personal development here. So for example, personal development means I'm gonna go on a sailing trip and my wife will not be with me because that sailing trip is a little bit more hardcore and she doesn't want that adventure. But family trips means we're taking everyone to Greece, for example, for probably 2 weeks and we're gonna stay there. That's a specific expense. Employees, I put here salaries, but you can have a list of all your employees and all your collaborators with their specific needs. Taxes, insurance, it's whatever you pay taxes to. Recurring services, I have a list of, I've only kept what I think people are paying for right now, but ours is like the original one is a lot bigger because we're paying for specific types of things that are under Squarespace. So for example, right now I don't I've hidden the source destination, but I have 3 for Squarespace, another 2 for Squarespace. I can filter at some point and see how much money am I giving to just to Squarespace in 1 year, how much money does my accounting cost, how much money do I give to things that I'm using for home. So for example, the Netflix stuff is for home. Um, and Disney Plus is for home, but Free Pick and Canva and Google Drive, they're for the office. And I think I have another field here. I used to. I have it in my original document, and I'm filtering between which one is a company expense and which one is a home expense. Um, and then I advise people to have amortization here. So, for example, this is a camera. The camera costs 2,000 euros, for example, and I'm planning on selling it 2 years down the line for about 500 euros. So basically, the usage of this camera costed me 1,500 euros for 24 months. And because I'm expecting to get 500 euros for it at some point, I will try to put aside in terms of amortization um, this amount of 1,500 euros in the next 24 months. So I will divide that by 1,500 by 24 and put a value here that is close to that, um, so that I know I have to put this money aside, because in 2 years I don't want to scramble to get another camera for 2,000 euros and not have the money or not be prepared for this. And this goes for just about any tech we use, because I find they are um, disposable. So I try to change the phones every 2 years, change the laptops every 3 or 4 years. 4 years is a lot right now, especially for what we're using. But this is the I'm going on a tangent. This is about Airtable. And investments, you can have investments in stocks and crypto and other stuff. And whenever I'm investing in something, I am thinking that I might lose everything. So I put it in a expense category. Okay. And then you have the four numbers to track. So for example, I always say that whatever you're earning should be no more than 60%, should go no more than 60% on fixed costs. If your fixed costs are 15% of what you're making or 5% of what you're making, you don't need this tutorial. You should put aside 5 to 10% in savings, and you can have that savings in all sorts of investments. No, you can have the savings in all sorts of rainy day funds and amortization. You should have investments in quantum of 10 to 15% of what you're making every month. Time in the market beats time in the market. And you should have guilty-free spending between 20 and 25%. You can adjust these ratios to get to 100% however you want, but I wouldn't go further than whatever the max is here. And now I know, because whenever I see this, because it's in the same document, I know that my fixed costs are going to be X amount out of this whole sum, because this is filtered by cash flow and it's grouped by. So when it's filtered by cash flow, I mean where cash flow is expenses, um, and then I group everything to have it tidy, and I can see it. Um, I can have the overview. Okay, 46 minutes already. You should have a. These are some other things that I wanted to talk about, but this is not a Airtable tutorial. If I talk about this, I can go into depth. I track whatever games I want to play and how much time do I need to spend on them. And I also plan them whenever I find the time. So, for example, I have a list of all the movies that I want to see in 2024. These are the movies that I wanted to see in 2000. These are the movies left from 2023 that I really want to see. Movies left unseen from 2022, because I've been having this type of database for probably 7 or 8 years now. I'm only keeping track of the last three. if I haven't seen a movie in the 3 year span that I have time for, then I'll just delete it because it's probably not going to be important to me. And I have TV shows and I have hours taken to see them. So, for example, Succession, uh, it takes 38 hours to see right now. I'm going to start it this month. Tokyo Vice Season 2 comes in April. True Detective Season 4, I think it's left on whatever. Shogun comes out in February, and I want to see it in February. You get the drill. I track how long does this take because I know I have only 470 hours of personal development time in a year. I cannot use more than or set aside more than 2 hours per day, and I can't do it daily. So I'm going for a 220 day of 2 hours per day. Some days maybe 5 hours, some days no time, no personal time, but the average is going to be 472, around 500 hours per year. So this allows me to keep myself in check and not want too much. So, for example, if I would like to see some Game of Thrones type of TV show that probably takes 100 hours, or if I want to game some of these 75, 100-hour games, it's not going to happen probably this year. So as you can see, I still have The Witcher, which is 90 hours, and Elden Ring from 2023. And I have some new games that will come out, or they came out, or they will come out um, for 2024. Some of these are planned, some of them I just have to deal with the idea that I'm never gonna play them, and that's fine. The Wheel of Life is something that we do at the end of the year. You score these categories and you talk about what you want to celebrate at the end of the year and why you chose these particular things to celebrate. And you can do it with your spouse or your significant other. And I keep this in a document so I don't lose it. And then I have a list for guilty-free spending. Um, I don't know. You can have a list for just about anything. And we have a travel plan for probably the next years. Because sometimes you just put information here and you can come back to it later, see whatever works. For example, 2024, um, we have some things that we really need to, we really want to go to. So we've put it in a spreadsheet and it calculates. This is the simplified version because I had to delete all the information that I had previously here. But it calculates how much the travel costs, how much food and accommodation cost, and all that jazz. So now you have an overview about an overview of your travel spending, which is a guilt-free spending type of affair, which then trickles down to your cash flow, and you will see it here, and it will keep you in check to not go overboard. In level 2, in the video about level 2, we're going to go over how you can connect these tabs, these tables, to have information flowing from one to another, and we'll talk about some automations. And in level 3, we'll talk about interfaces, which takes all the information you have and just show it nicely in a broader way, so you can have an easier overview instead of actually checking out numbers in a table. You can have pie charts and other types of information that anyone can see. So for example, if I would share this board with the whole family, like the extended family, my parents, my wife's parents, they would be able to know in a second what's our financial status, what trips we have planned, when do we want to take those trips, so they can plan with us or for us. So, for example, if we're leaving home for 2 weeks, maybe someone has to water the plants and things like that. But this is level 2 and 3, and I'll talk about them at a later date. I hope I haven't been very boring. You can share the whole board. You can share the only a view. So for example, I can go into the cash flow, I can go into the expenses, and if I want to share, I want to show this to a friend of mine, I can share it. I can create a link to view, and this is information. This is important because they won't be able to modify this, but they will be able to see what am I doing wrong, what am I doing well. Ioana is using Airtable to plan. My wife is using Airtable to plan her Instagram posts, using um, long text format and attachments with pictures and everything like that. And she's working in collaboration with other people, and they can give their input, what works, what doesn't. We also track how many followers we've had, or how many likes, or the overall engagement, and you can have an overview of what worked and what didn't. Um, Even if Instagram, for example, gives you this information, you will have it. But this is important because if you do it for clients as well and you manage their Instagram accounts or social media accounts, you will have hard data uh, to go on by for next year and new strategies and things like that. Um, I think the whole net worth and cash flow is useful for a lot of people just to get you started using Airtable. And then if you like it, you will probably be inclined to get into the next levels of it. And I've managed not to pay for it for 7 years. I think you can do that too. This is it for now. I can I can start working on level 2. Have a good one. Thank you for having the patience to listen to me for 55 minutes. Bye bye now.